Good day everyone. So we are on our week 11. So this is our last topic for the midterm. So ang examination natin is on November 1st week. So let us now proceed sa topic natin for week 11. So we will be calculating the GDP and GNP. So ang title topic natin is Computation of National Income. Diba class, last week, we discussed national measurement along with the GDP and also sa GNP. So, this week, we will focus on how to calculate the GDP and also paano sa i-calculate ang GNP. Before that, unsa kaya ang gross domestic product? So, from what we have discussed last week, 'di ba? Ihimay-himay lang nako tong discussion from last week, no? If we say gross, so ang meaning ani or other term for this is the total. Then if we say domestic, it means within the country. And then the product equals to final items na gibuhat. So, ang GDP in short kay dollar value of final goods and services produced in a country in 1 year. So, what is gross domestic product? So, this is a currency of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given period, or total income sa whole nga nation, or a measurement of nation's economic well-being, also a measurement of nation's economic growth from one period to the next. It is also kaning GDP is commonly calculated via expenditures. So, if we say expenditure, it is a money spent on something. So, in business nga perspective, ang expenditure, naga-imply ni siya og mga investment or something that will bring value over time. So, the definition of an expenditure manggod is the act, again, of spending money. Maliban sa money is that we also spend time, and it is something on which you spend your money. So, an example of a expenditure is the kwarta nga nagastos na to on, for example, like the office equipment na ato ang gipalit. So, it's either uncountable na mga equipment or countable nga amount nga nagastos nato. So, that is the expenditures. So, before ko mag-proceed kung paon sa i-calculate ang GDP, I want to ask a question. From what I have said earlier, unsa kaya tong type of goods and services nga included sa GDP? Alright? Hulaan nyo nga. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, the type of goods and services nga included sa GDP class is called final goods or services. Alright, so let us proceed on how to calculate the GDP. Alright, so calculation na jud no na aspect, but no worries, dali lang ni siya na mga calculation, unlike from our prelim na mga different kinds of formula. So this is the formula that we will be using on calculating the GDP. So we have C plus I plus G plus X, open and close parenthesis, X minus M. So, in this calculation, we use the expenditures approach. Okay? So, expenditure ni siya nga kind of approach because calculating the GDP, natay duha ka approach. The income approach and this one is the expenditure approach. So, this is the amount nga na gastos na to on the final goods and services para makalculate na to ang GDP. So, okay ha, i-remember kung unsa ang formula na gamiton. We have the C plus I plus G plus open and close parenthesis na X minus M. So, tandaan ninyo na or you can also screenshot or take down note for this formula. Then, on our next slide, ihimay-himay na to kung unsa ang mga different na katumbas aning mga symbols from our formula. So, first is the consumption or the C dito as a GDP. So, this is the amount of goods and services na purchase sa household. Okay? So, ang mga na-purchase na mga goods and services only counts the goods produced in the current na tuig. Dili from the last year, dili pod sa next year. Current na tuig, the 2021 nga, for example, the 2021 na year. Kung sa tong mga consumption nimo from January to December na consumptions. So, unsa ang example aning consumption? Mga foods na inyong pamalit, vacations na mga expenses, haircuts ninyo, mga sanina ninyo, and there are a lot of things pa nga belong under sa consumption. As long as na ginakaon ba ninyo or ginagamit ninyo for your personal hygiene or sa inyong self. Then we also have investment or the I. So this is the amount na nagastos sa isa ka business on productive resources. So pwede dara masulod ang mga purchases of new homes sa mga consumers nato diri sa to ang local or national purchases of home. Then, pwede sa dara mga bag-o na mga machines, mga factories, or even mga research na kind of investment. And also, under sa investment, mga magkakaroon ng increase in inventories, no? If there is an increase in inventories, it is also counted as an investment. Then, we also have the government spending or the G. So, this is the amount nga nagastos sa to ang state or local government provided na mga services. Examples, mga dalan, mga sa education na perspective, mga pa-scholarship nila, sa roads kay ang mga maintenance, ang pagbuhat sa mga bagong dalan. Then sa military, sa military or sa mga government employees ang ilahang mga sahod. Then pagpabuhat ng mga parks, mga public libraries, and many other things nga ginagastuhan or ponduhan sa ato ang gobyerno. Then we have the net export. So sa net export, on our module, ang gamit nato sa net export is the NX. So, kanang net export, we have to, the X here is the export. So, we have to less the export sa tuang imports or sa M. So, if we say exports, this is goods na we ship to other countries. So, from Philippines to the other countries. If imports, kay mga goods that we bring in from other countries. So, for example, mga raw materials from China going to the Philippines. So, sa net export, ito ang gamiton na formula no, to get the net export is exports minus imports equals to net exports. So, another question that I want to ask. What is the equation of GDP? diba? Take down notes na mo kung unsa tong equation kaganiya sa GDP para dili na to malimtan. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So again, the equation for GDP is C plus I plus G plus close and open parentheses X minus M. So that will be our equation for the GDP. Now let us proceed to the expenditure nga example. So in this example, you only need the highlighted part nga kaning sa ato ang solving for today. So kay di ba ang ato ang formula for the expenditure is C plus G plus I plus open and close parentheses X minus M. So highlighted na diri ang mga kailangan nato for the calculation of expenditure approach of the GDP. So GDP equals to C plus I plus G plus open and close parentheses X minus M. So GDP equals pilagan ang ato ang consumption. So ang household consumption nato is 304 and our investment nato or DI is 124. How about the government na purchases? So we have here, or government expenditures. So we have here the 156 and ang ato ang net export nga 18 pesos. So para makuha nato ang answer, i-sum up nato tanan nga value na nakuha nato from our table. So the answer here for the GDP is equals to 602 pesos. Then sa panduha nga approach of calculating the GDP, so we have income approach. So the income method or the income approach, this is kanang sa labor nga perspective. If sa labor nga perspective, these are the salary and wages of the labor, or we also can use the capital nga nakakuha og interest, land that gets a rent, and entrepreneurship gets profit as their remuneration. So ang total sum of all these factor incomes is called GDP at factor cost. So the following equation will be used to calculate the GDP using ang income approach. So this GDP formula takes the total income generated by the goods and services produced. So this is the formula: GDP equals to the total national income plus sales taxes plus depreciation plus net. So if we say total national income or the NI, this is the sum of all wages, interest, and even profit. Para makuha nato ang national income, kailangan nato i-plus ang wages, ang rent, ang interest, and ang profits. Then regarding sa sales taxes, this is the consumer taxes imposed by the government on the sales of goods and services. So this is a tax. Sa pangalan pa lang nga sales taxes, this is a tax na gina-impose sa ang gobyerno sa mga consumer sa ilahang sa ilang sales of goods and services. Then we also have depreciation. So this is the cost nga allocated sa mga tangible asset over its useful life. So this is an example of the income approach. So again, the highlighted part lang ang ato ang mga kailangan para ma-solve ang income approach nga GDP. So, paunsa nato siya i-calculate? First, again, class, we have to get the total national income. Kay bago na to makuha ang total national income, we have to sum up the wages, the rent, the interest, and profit sa to ang problem. So, pangitaon na to ning ko ano, mga salaries and wages. Kung naa, if wala, then no need to kuan na appeal sa kuan sa ato ang calculation. If ever na natin makitaan nga rent, kasali siya. If wala, then wala. Then we also have the interest and the profit. So here this is the calculation of the national income, no? For a while. Alright. So, this is the calculation of the national income. So, asa kaya ang kuan? Paano sa kaya makalculate ang national income? So, again, we have to sum up all the wages, the rent, interest, and profit. So, asa man ang wages diri So, we can see the wages here. Kanina ay W, no? Under the depreciation, 67 pesos. Then, nabatay rent diri as a problem. Yes, we have rent. Kaning sa rental income. So, 75 pesos. Then, naabatay interest. So, pangita na itong interest. We also have the interest. The interest income nga 150 plus nabatay profit na makitaan diri. We also have business profit, so 200 pesos. Ang total na national income nato is 492 pesos. So karon kay nakuha naman nato ato ang national income, pwede na nato makalculate ang ato ang income approach nga GDP. So paano nato i-calculate ang ato ang GDP under sa income approach? So, GDP equals to national income plus indirect business taxes plus ang depreciation. So, GDP equals to 492. Asa na ko ang 492? Tong sa itong gi-calculate ka ganiha nga national income. So, i-plus na to ang indirect business taxes nga 74. So, given na po sa itong problem ang indirect business taxes. If wala, if dili given, so that is 0. So in this problem, kay given man siya indirect business taxes 74 pesos, we have to include it in our calculation of the GDP. And then we also have depreciation nga 36 pesos. So total sum of net income, business taxes, and the depreciation kay 602 pesos for our GDP under sa income approach. For our gross national product or the GNP, if we say GNP, it is the value of goods and services nga na-produce in a given time period by factors of production owned within an economy. So, unsa-unsa tong mga different nga key points that we have to remember regarding sa GNP and unsa ang iyang difference with the GDP. So, the GDP first measure the total production, diba, of all people living within a country's border. While kaning GNP manggod class, it measures the total value of production by a country's citizen wherever they are living, mapa within the country man or outside our border line sa toang country. What does it stand for? Kaning GNP, di ba kagani niya kay gidiscuss nato tong gross domestic product, like for gross kay for the gross kay mo to siya ang total, sa domestic kay sa domestic domestic kay mauto siya ang within the country, then the product is the final item na gibuhat. So with the perspective of the GNP, ang gross, this is the total, no? Then ang national diri sa gross national product, kay diba gross is total, ang national kay ang meaning niya is by citizens. So it means goods made by the citizens. Ang GNP class usually very close siya to a nation's GDP. So paano sa nato ma-determine ang GNP? So this is the calculation for the GNP. So this is the official formula, no, para makalculate na to ang GNP. So we have y equals to c plus I plus g plus nx plus z. Ma'am, pare-parehas lang lagi sila ang calculation sa kuan, ma'am. GDP na dungagan lang og letter z. Actually, class, naana siya alternative nga formula para mas dali na to siya ma-remember. So, alternatively, ang gross national product can also be calculated jud siya using atong first na formula na ginagamit nato dito sa GDP na ginatawag nato as expenditure approach. Okay? So, this is the alternative nga kuan. Before I will proceed sa alternative, ihimay-himayon sa nako kung unsa ning mga kuano, kung unsa ang different key terms aning formula nato. So first kay ang letter C, this is the consumption of expenditure, then the I is the investment, the G is the government expenditure, and NX is the net export. So this is the value of import minus sa value of export. So, actually, mas mauna ang value sa export versus sa import if we have to minus it. Then, Z equals to net income. So, net income inflow from abroad minus sa net income outflow to foreign countries. So, what I mean sa net income inflow from abroad, this is a payment, no, from the goods made outside sa country by a Filipino owned businesses, while ang sa outflow, this is a payment to the foreign countries from the goods made inside the country by a foreign-owned na mga businesses. So, paunsa nato magamit tong alternative way of calculating the GNP. So, the other formula nga para mas dali na to ma-remember ang formula sa GNP equals to GDP kung unsa tong sa expenditure nga kuan approach nga solving or formula for the GDP mo to siya tong gamiton diri not the income base. So GDP expenditure approach plus net income inflow from overseas minus nato ang net income outflow to foreign countries. So again, ang GDP, ang iyahang calculation, 'di ba? Consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus export minus imports. So, this is the example of the GNP calculation. So, let us assume daw class that country ABC, he spends a total of 100 million pesos on the consumption, 75 million on investment, 200 million on government expenditures. So with that, we can calculate the CIG, but we still have to look for the import and export. So additionally, on this problem, the country daw kay nigastos daw sila og 50 million sa tuang imports and sells our and also naa sila imports or nasa imports na 50 million and napod sila export nga 25 million. So, sa second paragraph, country ABC also has multiple citizen and businesses in foreign countries who generates another nga income from the other country. And the foreign businesses that operate within sa Pilipinas kay naga-earn sila diri og 50 million which is sent back to their home country. So for example, ang US kay if ever nga ang mga foreign businesses kay nag-operate diri sa Pilipinas kay makadawat japon sila or maka-earn japon sila 50 million na kailangan nato i-send back dito sa ilahang country sa US. So we will be using the formula na GNP equals to C plus I plus G plus XN plus Z. So with our problem, okay, so first let us look for the letter C or the consumption. So the consumption here in our problem is worth of 100 million and the investment sa tuang problem is 75 million and the government expenditure equals to 200 million and X nato or the net export or the value of export minus the value of import equals to negative 25 million because again ang export na to is 25 million i-minus na to ang import nga 50 million so magkaroon tayo ng negative 25 na sagot. So ang Z na to kay this is the net income. So net income inflows from abroad i-minus na to ang net income outflow. So we have 100 million. So makita nato ning Z sa to ang second paragraph. So again, pag-calculate na to ani, may tabo GNP if i-plotting na nato for our kanong sa third paragraph na formula, GNP equals to C plus I plus G plus XN plus Z. So GNP equals to 100 million plus 75 million and i-plus na po na to ang government expenditure nga 200 million. I-plus na po na to ang net export nga negative 25 million. Then i-plus na to ang Z or the net income nga 100 million. So we have here 450 million. So therefore, we can conclude nga si country ABC ang iyahang GNP is 450 million. So that is all our topic for today, the calculation of the GDP. So we have two types of approach on the GDP. We have the expenditure approach, the income approach, and the calculation of the GNP. We also have summarize our discussion last week regarding sa measurement of income, unsa tong definition sa GNP and GDP ug unsa tong mga dapat tandaan nato para dili ta malibog sa GNP and sa GDP. So again, thank you for listening sa tong discussion for today. So if you have questions and clarifications, ayaw mo og kaulaw og as kay para guidan ta mo sa mga questions na inyong gusto ipangutana. So thank you and God bless everyone.